In this video, we will be taking a look at the many cancelled Resident Evil games that never made it to a release. Now it's worth mentioning that this video won't include every cancelled Resident Evil game because I already covered a big chunk of them in my Resident Evil cut content series. So with that being said, if you do find this video interesting, then make sure to check out my playlist containing the cut content of every Resident Evil game. Now with that out of the way, let's get right into the video. Biohazard 3 was to sequel the events of 4th Survivor, continuing the exploits of Hunk, the well-known Umbrella mercenary that appeared in Resident Evil 2. In the story, he was sent to retrieve a sample of the G-Virus while getting caught up in a viral outbreak on a cruise ship. An alternative standard enemy to the zombies was envisioned, with the T-Virus infusing plant DNA into infected humans. The gameplay was going to be comparable to Resident Evil 2, because Capcom thought they would not be able to improve PlayStation technology much beyond what the game was capable of. The game was planned to rely on pre-rendered backgrounds of better visual quality than 3D environments that most games used at the time, with as many as 16 separate backgrounds per room. This next cancelled Resident Evil game doesn't even have a title. The game was going to revolve around the BSA agent Jill Valentine. Creative Assembly concept artist Brad Wright drew at least 3 pictures to be sent, showing a white dress girl undergoing some sort of blood transfusion, as well as concept art showing what appears to be Jill and Carlos. The Resident Evil Portable was the working title of a video game slated for the PlayStation Portable. Little information was released other than it was intended with the PSP Go in mind, and would have been an original story totally different from a Resident Evil game. Since its announcement at E3 2009, no new information has been revealed. So Resident Evil 2 did have plans to get ported over to the SEGA Saturn. Development on the Saturn port began sometime after the PlayStation release. Capcom began working with Next Entertainment, a SEGA company responsible for the Saturn port of Resident Evil. Capcom lost faith in the project early in production, finding the CPU to be slower than they liked and the GPU unable to handle the graphical calculations. It was agreed with Next that a Resident Evil 2 port would be a noticeably inferior port of the PlayStation game, and production shifted towards developing an entirely new game that would work well on the upcoming Dreamcast console, this game being Resident Evil Code Veronica. Resident Evil 2 was also going to have a Game Boy Advanced version. There was a tech demo created in 2003 by Raylight Studios. Unfortunately though, by this point in time, Capcom had lost interest in the viability of Game Boy ports, and the pitch was ultimately rejected. The original Resident Evil has 2 scrap ports, being on the Game Boy Color and the Game Boy Advance. HotGen was approached by Capcom to develop the Game Boy Color port sometime before April 1999, and was initially intended for an autumn release. HotGen was ambitious in its port of the game, and intended to make it as close to the original PlayStation version as possible, with the characters, enemies, and mechanics as expected, as well as a new pause feature to replace ink ribbons, which was more convenient for handheld consoles. Based on an interview with HotGen, a greater variety of enemies was envisioned, as well as a booby trap disarming mechanic. Problems, however, were taking place behind the scenes due to significant difficulties in replicating pre-rendered backgrounds on an 8-bit handheld. HotGen would admit that changes have been made to certain environments, and there were tight restrictions on the use of sprites that make things difficult for development. At the time of the interview, HotGen was hoping for a March 2000 release. In March, however, it was announced that Capcom had canceled the project, saying they were not confident that the product would have made both consumers and Capcom happy. Since the game's cancellation, 2 cartridges that include data for the game have been found. Both of these cartridges revealed that the game ends at the lab elevator. However, elements from the final areas did remain unfinished. The Game Boy Advance port of this game was created as a tech demo back in 2002. The game was not intended as a direct copy of its source, instead sought to adapt the original 1996 game to something more appropriate to the console. From leaked screenshots, we can see that the dormitory building looks noticeably different. Resident Evil vs. Gree is the title of another cancelled Resident Evil game from Capcom. Unfortunately, there is no new info on this game. All we have is a title for the game. And there you have it. Those are just a few of the many cancelled Resident Evil games. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace.